That was a scintillating speech by Justice Pratibha. And she almost persuaded me to pick up my pen and start drafting a new intellectual property law. And that was very stimulating. And I'm sure the course of the day will have more such stimulating exchanges from very experienced thought leaders in law and industry. Let me thank Monica ji for calling me here today morning to be part of this team of people, the creamy layers of law and justice. If you look at conclaves like this, and we need more of them. Probably we need more of them every day. Because I suppose each one of us experiences that wonderful ideas, new ideas, thoughtful propositions just pop up in our head almost every day, provided you are alive to the world of experience around you. You just need to notice how these ideas pop up. So I wish we have more such conclaves in as many places as possible. And when Justice Pratibha ji was talking about the emerging domains of intellectual property law, what else connects intellectual property law to two important dimensions of any community, and particularly now at the global level? I often begin to think now that given the changing dimensions of global relationships, what one may call, not exactly a collapse, but the withdrawal of certain ideological dispositions across the globe, socialism versus the pristine free market, capitalist clashes, the Cold War, etc., which are all dead now. So two important things which are germane to any community and society for peace and order is creativity. In the absence of creativity and innovation, which means freedom and liberty, at the same time, creativity, innovation, not for the purpose of self-aggrandizement, but towards a world of peace and order and understanding where the community also partakes in the benefits of your creativity and innovation. Therefore, the balance, the challenge today the world faces is how do we really manage the claims to equality and creativity and innovation? It's a very fundamental question, I think, which must be addressed by the world at large. I don't propose to enter into the very nice dimensions of intellectual property which just Pratibha Singh outlined, but I think I'm going to pick up some of those ideas from my own understanding of looking at not only India's need for the global need on less law and more resolutions. Less law and more resolutions. We have today more laws but less resolutions. That's a problem. Now we wake up in the morning and then from the toothbrush to the toothpaste we use to go to bed, the bed linen we use, we are caught in law, whether intellectual property law or otherwise. So law pervades us in so many ways. Perhaps we cannot do without it today. We cannot probably fall back on mere ethical and moral considerations to govern our daily lives because we live disparately. So many issues have emerged in the past 100 years, and I don't propose to go into all of them now. I know when you want to do an extempore speech, the speaker is able to travel along with the mind of the listeners, and it's a more comfortable way of doing that. But there are occasions when a prepared speech is a little way of assistance to the speaker, and therefore I take leave of you to, and your permission, to speak from part of my prepared speech. The ideal of a science, namely to devise a set of axioms from which all phenomena or truths about the external world can be deduced, has also been in a related way the pursuit of law and justice. Kurt Gödel, the set-born mathematician, sought to demonstrate in the incompleteness theorem that within any given branch of mathematics, there would always be some propositions that could not be proven either true or false using the rules and the maxims of that branch. Ever since I encountered this proposition, it has been a constant question for me about the scope for comprehension, for the completeness of our aspiration towards full justice for all, and whether there can be ultimate truth machines beyond human agencies to aid and assist justice administration. Every new thought and rule on doing justice invites its challenges, perhaps because we retain some elements of the past. But just as in mathematics, the genius of the human mind endeavors to push the frontiers of knowledge, so in the pursuit of justice for all and equal justice, I think we will always engage ourselves relentlessly to weed out the choking parts of a system. I understand that truth discovery is the fundamental to doing justice. This demands that the legal framework is just and not oppressive, and the justice framework is of fair and equal regard. If the justice framework is weak, inefficient, corrupt, non-accountable, or lackadaisical, a good legal framework by itself will fail to deliver. And so if the legal framework is unequal or disregards ethical considerations, the best of justice framework cannot bend or correct the crooked timber of such a law. The intrinsic connection between these two is demonstrated throughout the history of laws and justice systems. The innovation in the judicial process, virtually in all branches of law, are also due to the gaps that are noticed in the course of the working of the systems. The interpretation process, so beautifully captured by Benjamin Cardozo in the nature of the judicial process, will always continue to be an intrinsic part of our administration of justice. An adversarial system, whether common law or civil law, is about truth discovery, aided by procedural laws and evidence principles conceived to promote past truth discovery by an impartial entity. We know about the limitations of and distortions in truth discovery in an adversarial system. We have devised a whole hierarchy of courts right up to the Supreme Court to correct errors or wrongs which can occur in the working of and inherent in an adversarial system. But given the complex set of wrangles and disputes, concerns and challenges which arise naturally in contemporary times of social, economic and political changes and global reorganization, a complete departure from the adversarial system does not appear to be wise and fair. It is in this context that we need to take stock of dispute resolution from new lenses. We think arbitration is all about truth understanding. Negotiation is about truth adjustments. Conciliation is about truth compromises. Mediation, finally, is about future truth discovery. We have now a basket of systems, and we're invited by wise voices from all over the globe to choose the best that will serve emerging global compacts with all their reaches and promise of human fulfillment. Two articles relating to commercial dispute resolution caught my attention. One was a study of culture as an important element in designing and executing international commercial dispute resolution schemes, on a comparison of the US and Japan, their legal systems and procedures. The other was a study of international commercial dispute resolution arising out of the Belt and Road Initiatives of China. Though this hugely ambitious project hegemony indirectly, China envisages cooperation with the BRI countries in 5 areas, all of which are of strategic importance, namely policy coordination, infrastructure connectivity, trade facilitation, financial integration, and a people-to-people bond. It is not too difficult to read the global and domestic political implications of these alliances. Some important insights are available in such studies, and we need to pay very close attention to these developments, both the gains and the losses. The Chinese Journal of Comparative Law is a source for a good pickup. Before I turn to them, let me plow through certain unexplored areas. When we talk of commercial disputes and the surrounding issues, we tend to look at the inadequacies of arbitration law and the apparent maze that we are in. We think India has not done enough in pushing legal changes as to capture international arbitration markets and institutions, or to redirect the flow of arbitrations into the Indian soil. We compare with London, Paris, Hong Kong, or Singapore. We say that our courts still lack the arbitration vigor as we do not practice what we preach. Even as courts do talk pro-arbitration language, particularly in respect of minimizing or avoiding litigation wrangles, we seem to be like a caterpillar, awaiting easy emergence of the butterfly, with all the mysteries that happen inside the chrysalis of the cocoon. We need to travel the inevitable distances that are products of certain systems and demands of the bursting limits of international trade and commerce. Too many things moving in too many directions. The 4 elements of economics, namely production, consumption, investment, and savings, are no longer in any geographical, unidirectional linear course. The flow of investments is now triggered by many new forms, a new entrance into the competition. It is no longer from the west to the rest. Similarly, consumption patterns and market expansions are also triggered and shaped by many emerging forces. The new silk routes of trade and exchange of resources and products, propelled by fast-reach impacting technology inventions, are faster than our legal thoughts and ideas. In the process, we are pushed into dialogues and debates planted or scripted elsewhere. Just take stock of institutions established in the early 20th century, like the International Chamber of Commerce, calling itself as Merchants of Peace, and the ICC Court. The United Nations Initiative on International Trade and Commerce, followed by competing centers of arbitration in the global north and the challenging south. ADR dialogues began to occupy dispute resolution processes. Apparently, many lines and trajectories are on the dispute resolution graph. Somewhere quietly, the semblances of adversarial system continue to lurk. Like as we saw about the incompleteness theorem, some dragging elements of adversarial systems creeping into the arbitration industry, if I may use that expression, continue to bother its ideal working expectations. In the midst of all these, and given the relentless pushes of international trade, the ambitions and alliances in international trade and economic exchanges, and India's leap into global competition on various fronts have triggered the debates and affecting close correspondence between economic activities and legal domains. We began to shape and trim our arbitration commercial dispute resolution laws to tune with international conventions. Our Commercial Courts of Law Act 2015 has been hailed as a great beginning. However, we keep ourselves busy with critical views on the slow motions of arbitrations, notwithstanding timelines enacted in the law. While we went with our preoccupation repairing the dents judicially made by its ambivalent interpretations in respect of court interventions in the arbitration process, we lost in the bullet train race in building institutions and centers of ADR. These are some outstanding questions in arbitration law and practices which call for new strategies. How do we comprehend the fast-changing contours of global economic forces, the shift and dispersal of centers of gravity of economic activities from the developed north to the south and the east, global financial and banking services widening the service segments, new dimensions of intellectual property, sustainable use of resources of nature, while not losing focus on the promotion of equal welfare of all. The European and the US-led global economic governance is no longer the dominant narrative. The series of attempts during the Trump period to respond to the greater power competition unleashed by China, such as the launching of the Indo-Pacific Business Forum in the year 2018, committing US $113 billion towards regional digital economy, energy, and the infrastructure project. And the Asia Reassurance Initiative Act, as also the better utilization of investments leading to Development Act of 2018, are all examples of multilateralism. The Blue Dot Network was envisaged as a partnership of development finance corporations of the US, Japan, Australia, Singapore, Canada, and the European Union. These were all attempts to attract private sector financing, institutional investors, and the development of local debt and capital market. The nature and extent of engagement, of involvement of various countries in almost all the continents in the BRI necessarily vary. The problems which both these countries and China have encountered in the course of such engagements have been studied. What attracted several of these countries into the BRI network seems to be the absence of rigid and unidirectional conditionalities. While this flexibility of the Chinese investment process was too inviting and attractive, one can see that the assumption, the legal framework, the legal foundation of the BRI now stands exposed. When you look at the European scene, the countries that have not endorsed the BRI perceived that the BRI has been initiated by a country that the European Commission considers as a systemic rival with different ideological beliefs. On the other hand, those countries that have gone ahead with the BRI seem to be comfortable with China providing substantial amounts of credit, and a grant of loans without too many conditionalities, which are the features of lending by IMF and the World Bank. There are also issues relating to China's digital Silk Road involving security concerns. Gathering from the studies on the BRI, one can see that the BRI reflects the following preferences, namely informal bilateralism, avoidance of multilateral treaties, and settlement of disputes through negotiation, mediation, and arbitration, as opposed to rule of law adjudicatory framework. Notwithstanding the ups and downs of the BRI and the serious concerns it has generated on a wide scale of issues, it can be seen that as of January 2021, China had signed 204 cooperation documents with 140 countries and 31 international organizations. The fact that the MOUs and similar documents are based on templates designed in China, there does not appear to be any abatement to the BRI at one level. Let's have a brief picture of India in India's ODI for the year 22-23 stands somewhere at US 9,829 million. Resource-rich countries offering tax advantages are the most favored destinations. Though there is a shift in the current year, steel, energy, pharmaceutical, IT services, agriculture, consumer products, vehicles and transportation, both of inland and ports, seem to be the major sectors. Though policy relaxation have paved the way for higher growth investment, the quantum of MOU and free trade agreements compared to BRI stand at a little low. Mergers and acquisitions and joint ventures are the predominant methods. What kind of legal principles and norms should therefore be devised or chosen to facilitate growth of investment and ensure confidence in the smooth and comfort zones of dispute resolutions? Maybe there's a need to contemplate a global investment contract law. It's important for our understanding and analysis of domestic legal responses to the vastly complex global economic contours that we take stock to pass and to reflect on breaking new grounds. By now, we are comfortable with the wide heterogeneity of legal systems in our bilateral and multilateral treaties, unlike the BRI, which faces inwards towards China and the Chinese institutional processes. Let us look at some of the initiatives set in motion by China to strengthen and enhance legal cooperation for BRI. Between 2016 to 2019, few ambitious and interesting initiatives, particularly involving legal fraternity and certain institutions, are worthy of being noticed. Just look at the few of them, like in 2016, an International Academy of Belt and Road Hong Kong, which is established to build a platform for academic and professional exchanges in law, economics, and institutional relations. And I find this published books on law and dispute mechanisms. And if you look at the last one, the Global Lawyers Forum in 2019, which aims to promote rule of law, develop the legal profession, and push exchanges between Chinese and foreign lawyers. So we have some parallels happening in our country. The reason for looking at this initiative is not merely to suggest competing legal fraternity initiatives from Indian soil, though such initiatives can breathe fresh air into our debates. We are looking at all these not for a mechanical replication of these initiatives, but to learn from them. At the end of the day, the global economic and financial investments are essentially matters of reorganizing the global economic power and the legal processes. We will have to necessarily innovate and go beyond the procedure, principles, and processes that were good in the days of Adam Smith. I do not wish to say that I can easily create an alphabet soup of commitments, as somebody described while talking about the flexibility of soft law and its challenge to consistency, coherence, predictability, risk management, and transparency. While a decade of BRI seems to expose the crises of its viability and has run aground in Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Malaysia, and some of the African countries, such as Nigeria, Kenya, and Ivory Coast, the story has still not come to an end. The debt burdens of these countries may in due course cause their own ripples in global economy. I thought it was important to devote some attention to the BRI subject, since our discussions on dispute resolution can become sterile if we are only engaged in a mechanical competition with institutional initiatives in the field of arbitration and mediation, both in Europe and in Asia. Infrastructure development, energy engagement, and the transnational connectivity in all its dimensions is the current stage of economic globalization. Thus, our ideas, products, services, and provisions cross at least one international border. Let's also keep in mind that the Chinese BRI area will account for a significant portion of the world economy, such as 40% of global exports, and Chinese investment in the BRI area has reached more than US 90 billion. The BRI studies thus link the nexus which demands for dispute resolution concerning a whole range of commercial transactions, investments, energy use and development, environmental protection, construction projects, taxation, etc. Between the WTO and BRI, maybe we need to launch more just and equitable economic geography. So where do we stand? Should we follow the rhetoric of criticisms about the persistent effects of our arbitration practice, as they are called, and trace the footsteps of those who have gone ahead of us in building institutions in the expanding field of alternate dispute resolution approaches? I mentioned about the Chinese Belt and Road initiatives. In 2018, the Supreme People's Court of China has established what is conceived as a one-stop commercial dispute mechanism vis-à-vis international trade and commerce in and with China. The China International Commercial Court is thought of as a multi-door courthouse offering an array of services where commercial disputes of parties can be addressed. By a notification issued in July 2022, the scope of the mechanism has been expanded to include additional group of arbitral institutions in mainland China, as well as the Hong Kong International Arbitration Center. It seems CIC has initiated collaboration with several institutions in the field of arbitration and mediation. Let us also keep in mind that geography of success are not immutable. The distinctions are between the Singapore International Commercial Court and the Chinese Commercial Court serve as illustrations on the need for a neoclassical approach, bridging economic decisions and political obligations. Thus, we can see as elsewhere, so in India, from contract law to corporate law, from debt law to insolvency law, from financial regulators to energy regulators. The demand is less law and more results, more informal processes and less judicial interventions. All of us know that political obligations follow economic activities, and democracy is all about the discharge of political obligations through law. It seems that new insights and norms that have emerged need to be connected to more flexible justice frameworks, like ethical norms and duties of arbitration judges and practitioners, or like relevant truth discovery and compromises norms in the dispute resolution process, where guidelines on fairness and ethical consideration by all parties can inform, or incorporation of innovative contract clauses, providing for dispute resolution avoidance procedures, incentivizing them, and maximizing the settlement procedures. I've not talked about the great speed and development of the initiatives in Singapore or in Europe, particularly in the field of mediation and negotiation. There can be no doubt that India can no longer afford to stand and watch or to live under the shadows. From the outlines of the conference, I find that very eminent practitioners of law from across the globe in India, in their manifold capacity, will look at all of them. The idea of conclaves, I said, is to promote sharing and cooperation and be able to build sustainable partnerships through policy and law. I have confined myself to certain broad reflection on the theme of the conclave. One final thought is that while institutions of arbitration or mediation or conciliation, howsoever designed, it will be important that the law itself facilitates and enables advisory interventions where needed by neutral and legally equipped bodies without compromising on the independence of the dispute resolution institutions and their processes. How do we go about it? It's a matter for, I think, creative thinking. It is said that law must follow the demands and footprints of social changes. How do we bind the non-negotiable norms of adversarial system with the flexibilities of mediation and conciliation? How do we script self-working accountability in contracts with voluntary sanctions for unethical breaches? How do we provide for self-correcting or periodic remedying in our contracts to avoid dispute generations? These questions, I think, have some answers in themselves. Thankful to each and every one of you for your close attention to these very broad reflections. I know I only wanted to look at them in order that some of those unexplored areas, like looking at a new way of developing a global contract investment law or a global contract law or a global intellectual property law, I think it's important to look at them. More particularly because today the globe is poised for global sharing. And every aspect of a global sharing must be, I think, informed on a more equitable and a fair basis. And that, I think, is going to be the product of conclaves like this. And thank you for all your attention.